One day, the regent came to the court with a sharpened blade, looking as if he wanted to tear me to pieces. I calmly dropped a thunderbolt on his head. I am pregnant, and the child is yours. Xiao Shuo is a major villain, but I am even more of a villain than he is. Ever since I can remember, the two of us have never gotten along. He could ride and shoot at 3, forcing me to learn poetry and painting at 2. He was a peerless young master, elegant as jade. So I turned around and stole his beloved, whispering a secret. I was born a delicate maiden, yet fate made me live as a man. Everyone says the Great Wei Empire was built by the Yuan and Xiao families together. The Yuans became emperors, while the Xiaos became nobles. The Xiao family had always believed they were equally entitled to the imperial throne, so my father found a pretext and swiftly had his father killed. Years later, he led his troops into the capital and nearly did the same to me with equal swiftness. Now, he is a powerful minister with overwhelming influence in the court. While I am a tyrant of unprecedented notoriety, he constantly schemes to seize the empire and overthrow the state. While I spend every moment plotting to eliminate the powerful minister and rid the court of treachery. In short, he wants to kill me, and I want to kill him too, but just at this very moment. I found out I'm pregnant and it's his child. To talk about this, we have to go back to the day he stormed the capital. He led an army of 200,000 soldiers, breaking through every obstacle, and marched straight to the imperial palace. I saw that the situation was beyond saving. Surrender meant death, and resistance meant death as well, so I sent his long-cherished white moonlight, my empress, Xie Yaohuan, to set a honey trap, delivering a pot of Longjing tea brewed before the rains. Made with her own hands, of course. This was no ordinary tea, it was laced with poison. I hid in the shadows, waiting only for the poison to take effect, so I could personally sever his head and show those 200,000 rebels who truly ruled this land. However, when I was sneaking around with a knife to take a head, he suddenly lunged at me. His eyes were bloodshot, his face twisted in a fierce expression, and even after I struck him with my knife, he didn't stop moving. How the poison ended up turning into that kind of drug, I have no idea. But in the end, I had to escape while leaning against the wall for support. Perhaps my strike was too vicious, or maybe the drug was too potent, but Xiao Shuo ran a high fever for several days and nights without any sign of it subsiding. I took the opportunity to spread the word that he had defied ancestral teachings and was struck by divine retribution, which was why he fell gravely ill upon reaching the imperial capital. At the same time, I created ghostly apparitions disguised as the ancestors of the Xiao family, wandering around, and even went so far as to summon thunderbolts to strike down the Xiao family's command banner. With just a few simple tricks like these, I managed to sow fear and unrest among his 200,000 troops. I may not be a talented commander or skilled in leading troops into battle like Xiao Shuo, but when it comes to cunning schemes and manipulating people's minds, if I claim to be second, no one dares claim to be first. When the time was ripe, I invited an enlightened monk to perform rituals to dispel evil spirits and appease the heavens. Coincidentally, Xiao Shuo's high fever subsided at that very moment. I then opened the Chengtian gate wide, welcoming him into the palace with great ceremony, adopting the demeanor of a wise ruler. First, I righted the wrongs done to his family with reason, then moved him with the shared blood and tears of our ancestors fighting side by side, and finally executed a few scapegoats to silence the public outcry. Throughout all dynasties, whether for emperors or court officials, filial piety and righteousness have always been the foremost virtues. In front of the Hall of Supreme Harmony, I shamelessly used despicable tactics to place him on the moral high ground. Xiao Shuo gripped the dragon-slaying saber, tightening and loosening his grip repeatedly, until the alloy steel hilt was deformed by his force. In the end, he still couldn't bring himself to press the blade against my neck. However, he was not someone to be easily manipulated. Later, he claimed that I was too young to discern people's true intentions, which allowed treacherous individuals to obstruct my path. He also said that my behavior was erratic, my nature reckless, and that I posed a threat to the stability of the nation. In short, to put it simply, I could continue to be the emperor. But I needed a capable minister to govern the nation to assist me, so he unabashedly declared himself a prince, assumed regency over the court, and became the first regent prince of the Great Wei dynasty. From then on, the regent prince of Great Wei, wielding the dragon-slaying saber, had the authority to execute corrupt rulers above and treacherous officials below, rightfully tying my fragile life to the tip of his blade. The entire court celebrated for 3 days and 3 nights over this. It's unclear whether they were relieved that the dynasty hadn't changed and their official positions were secure, or celebrating that someone had finally emerged to threaten my imperial neck. There are always treacherous ministers trying to harm me. From the day I ascended the throne, I understood this truth deeply. The day before, I suddenly realized my monthly cycle was delayed by half a month, so today I summoned the female physician Xiangzhu to the palace. As soon as Xiangzhu took my pulse, her expression immediately changed. "Your Majesty, you are with child. This is simply a bolt from the blue." As a female emperor disguised as a man, in order to conceal this identity, I have widely selected beauties from across the land, and I am known for being fickle and unpredictable. The consorts in every palace live in constant fear. How could I possibly let anyone notice anything unusual with a bulging belly? Turning around, I immediately had Xiangzhu bring me saffron. The saffron water hadn't finished brewing when news of Xiao Shuo's palace search arrived. It seemed that now that he had firmly secured his position as the regent, he finally had the time to deal with the one who had caused him to suffer divine retribution. Just as I picked up the medicinal brew, Xiao Shuo strode into my bedchamber, gripping his dragon-slaying saber. His hawk-like gaze swept over my medicine bowl, and a cold smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "If I didn't know your Majesty was a man, I would almost suspect you were trying to destroy the evidence before my search." Damn it, obviously, he was just joking. When I was 3 years old, he was already 7, and he said I looked like a little girl. We never got along well, and he often teased me about having feminine features. This offended my father, who had no heir, and naturally offended me as well. So I stole his beloved, and he deserved it. Would the regent like a bowl? There might be a surprise in it. He wished he could spit a mouthful of tea right in my dragon face. At this critical moment, I absolutely cannot drink this bowl of medicine. Whether I miscarry in front of him or he finds even the slightest clue, my life is definitely not going to be spared. He said that on the day he was assassinated in the military tent, he caught a whiff of the cold plum fragrance on that assassin. For the entire month, he searched all over the capital but couldn't find this particular spice. However, just yesterday, while passing through the palace storeroom, he happened to come across it. The manager said it was distributed for use by the palace concubines. The implication was that he suspected my concubines were the ones who attempted to assassinate him. He might as well have outright said I was the one who ordered it. He didn't mention the fact that he had dealt with that concubine, but he used it to threaten me. He gave me 2 options: either let him search the palace, even if he might not find anything during the search, it would still humiliate me and trample my dignity as the emperor. How could I maintain any authority in front of the court officials and the concubines afterward? Or, I could hand over that person. He generously gave me a day to think it over. He had just left, and my Empress Xie Yaohuan arrived right after. My Empress is dignified and magnanimous, but as soon as she entered, she dropped a thunderbolt on my head. That day, I was also in the tent. She said that day, she saw it. She saw me submitting beneath Xiao Shuo. She saw my true identity as a woman. She said that the person that night could only be her. If it were anyone else, it would mean certain death even for me. I was shocked, utterly shocked, but only for a moment. "So, it was you who drugged him." I finally understood why my poison had turned into that filthy drug. It must have been the medicine Xie Yaohuan added that neutralized the effects of my drug. Otherwise, Xiao Shuo wouldn't have reacted that way. Rage surged from the depths of my heart, and wicked thoughts arose in my mind. "You ruined my plans and now you want to use that to threaten me. Xie Yaohuan, who gave you the courage?" Guards. 2 shadow guards appeared without a sound. "Deal with the Empress. And make sure it's done cleanly." Xie Yaohuan was so frightened that her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the ground. In the blink of an eye, She pulled out her final trump card, a bone flute. The unique sound of the bone flute pierced the night sky over the Lijing Hall. In the dark night, several ghost-like figures swiftly rushed over, immediately protecting Xie Yaohuan. Xie Yaohuan smiled. Having survived the ordeal, she laughed heartily, with arrogance and even mockery toward me. The ruler of a nation, her triumphant gaze fell upon me, as if saying, "Your Majesty, can you still kill me now?" I really can't kill her, because these shadow guards belong to Xiao Shuo. In terms of combat skills, I'm no match for them at all. I was so close to killing this woman. What a pity, I have to say. Xiao Shuo is truly a devoted lover. When the Xiao family was in crisis, Xie Yaohuan threw herself into my arms without hesitation, and he actually holds no grudge at all. The bone flute he gave her can still command his secret guards even now. Not long after the bone flute sounded, he swept into the palace as if riding the wind and waves. Ashura, His Majesty wants to silence me. Xie Yaohuan, like a frightened rabbit, threw herself into Xiao Shuo's arms. Trembling uncontrollably, Xiao Shuo didn't look at her, nor did he hold her. Instead, he looked at me. My gaze was indifferent as I watched her act. It was me in your tent that night. The Emperor said you would only drink the tea I brought, and only I could deliver the fatal blow. I didn't want to, but I had to think of the lives of the entire Xie family. Xie Yaohuan wept as if drenched by rain, casually tossing a heavy blame onto me. Is it true? Xiao Shuo asked me. I didn't take it seriously. You should have expected this long ago. He was furious. Yuan Zhao, how could you stoop so low as to threaten your own empress into doing such a despicable thing? I smiled and looked at Xie Yaohuan. Empress, did you hear that? Despicable. Ha ha ha. Prince Regent, that's quite an evaluation. Xie Yaohuan's face instantly turned pale, and she buried her head deeper into Xiao Shuo's embrace. My nonchalant demeanor completely enraged Xiao Shuo. Yuan Zhao. I suppressed my smile. Xiao Shuo, do you have some misunderstanding about me? If I could drug you, why wouldn't I use poison? Do you think I enjoy wearing a green hat? I immediately passed this big iron pot back to Xie Yaohuan. Xiao Shuo was stunned, and Xie Yaohuan froze as well. Shuo, don't believe her. You have to trust me. I would never intentionally hurt you. I leaned back against the dragon throne, watching Xie Yaohuan with a pleased expression. The one who shared a night of passion with Xiao Shuo and the one who stabbed him are the same person. I wonder how Xie Yaohuan plans to cover up this lie. Clearly, Xiao Shuo was completely baffled as well. I thoughtfully struck him with another bolt of lightning. Lord Regent, you have engaged in an illicit affair with my empress. Tell me, how should I deal with this? If your subordinates were to find out that you launched a costly and devastating attack on the capital for a woman, only to then compromise and cease hostilities for her sake, what would they think? Xiao Shuo did not respond. His expression was extremely complex. After he left, I said to Xie Yaohuan, "Thank you, Empress, for giving me a handle to control him. Defiling the inner palace, I wonder if he can bear the weight of such a charge." Xie Yaohuan was both shocked and fearful. Are you a devil? The Empress jests. How could the word devil possibly describe my brilliance and might? Xie Yaohuan, how could my Empress be someone to be trampled upon? That very day, she moved into the Luxian residence on the pretext of being ill. Luxian residence is a Buddhist hall. The foolish emperor of the previous dynasty fell in love with a married woman. Since it was improper for him to overstep his status, he had her become a nun to sever her worldly ties. This Luxian residence was built by him for her at that time. Xie Yaohuan's intention in doing this is very clear. She has made up her mind to sever all worldly ties with me, so that she can justifiably rekindle her relationship with Xiao Shuo in the future. She even handed over the authority to manage the imperial harem to her archrival, Yu Mairen, the beautiful Lady Yu. 3 years ago, she was a legendary presence, stunning the entire realm and reigning supreme in the harem. I even went so far as to exhaust the people and drain the treasury to build the Kanglan Terrace for her by the Tay Lake, where one could reach for the stars above and gather splendor below. She had no family backing, yet I doted on her to the heavens, and no one dared to offend her. But in the end, I still neglected her. For one reason only: she always wanted to climb into my dragon bed. Even though Xie Yaohuan had always regarded her as a thorn in her side, why would she hand over the authority of the 6 palaces to her? Could it be just to make it easier for her to climb into my dragon bed? Keeping me constantly on edge, I believe this is the truth. That evening, my Ren brought soup to Lijing Hall. I casually took a couple of sips and, as usual, lit some calming incense. Before long, she was fast asleep. I was well aware of her intentions, but I didn't send her away. For one, I needed to establish her status as a favored consort, and for another, I needed her to shield me from doubts about my competence in certain matters. When I woke from a nightmare in the early hours of the morning, I found myself resting my head on her lap. She was gently stroking my long hair, her enchanting eyes captivating and alluring. "Your Majesty, did you have another nightmare? Since Xiao Shuo raised his army, I have often had nightmares of being killed by him, shot to death by his arrows, dismembered into a human pig, torn apart by 5 horses. Every possible way to die has played out in my dreams. But since the day I discovered I was pregnant, my nightmares have become very consistent. I dreamed I was fleeing barefoot through the wilderness, as if a demon were chasing me, yet Xiao Shuo came toward me and pierced my heart with a single sword thrust. He sneered at me with a sinister laugh. 'How dare you steal my seed?' I held my throbbing head as I sat up. 'When did you wake up?' 'Just now, Your Majesty. Are you going to the morning court today? May I assist you in changing your clothes?' I didn't respond, but as she helped me dress, I realized that she seemed to be half a head taller than me. 'My beloved consort, have you grown taller again?' 'Consort,' you smiled and said, 'It's all thanks to Your Majesty's care.' On the 5th day of Xie Yaohuan's stay at Luxian residence, Regent Xiao Shuo entered the palace for the first time. It was also on this day that I was assassinated. To be precise, it was Xiao Shuo who was assassinated right in front of me, within the imperial palace. Over a dozen black-clad, masked figures suddenly appeared, and at that moment, only the 2 of us were by the side of the Tay Pond. Given the suspicious circumstances, I immediately realized that this was Xiao Shuo's scheme of self-injury to gain trust. He couldn't publicly reveal that I had sent Xie Yaohuan to assassinate him, nor could he seek revenge against me openly and justifiably, so he deliberately orchestrated this assassination attempt. So, when the assassin thrust his sword toward Xiao Shuo's chest, I stepped in front of him to shield him. I heard a sharp, piercing sound as the blade tore through my clothing, entered along my collarbone, and instantly pierced through my shoulder. Xiao Shuo supported my back with one hand and struck out with his palm, instantly shattering the black-clad assassin's heart meridian. The assassin died on the spot. Not a single soul was left alive. By the time the Imperial Guards arrived, only a dozen or so corpses lay on the ground. Xiao Shuo clearly hadn't expected me to block that sword. Seeing the blood gushing from my wound, his face turned pale. "Why did you do that?" I covered my bleeding shoulder and laughed at him. The Regent truly is a ruthless man, capable of dealing such a dark blow even to himself. His pale face immediately turned dark. "You're saying it was me, wasn't it?" He glared at me, and I glared right back. Who doesn't know each other's true nature? Why pretend? He grew even more frantic, covered my eyes, and hoisted me over his shoulder. "Call the Imperial physician," he shouted. I corrected him from my position on his shoulder. "Call Xiangzhu." He rarely argued with me, just sneered a couple of times, telling me that even lust should have its limits. Because he didn't believe that a young medical attendant like Xiangzhu, who hadn't even grown all her hair, could possess any real medical skills. It was just my twisted taste. By the time we reached the Lijing Hall, Xiangzhu had already arrived with her medicine box. "Regent, please step aside," I commanded. Xiao Shuo crossed his arms, standing as firm as a mountain. "I must see His Majesty's injury with my own eyes. Who knows if it's real or fake, or if someone is trying to frame me?" I was furious. "I swear, if I get the chance, I will tear this scoundrel to pieces. Otherwise, I won't be able to quell the hatred in my heart." "Xiangzhu, cut open the clothes and show him." The clothes were carefully cut open layer by layer, revealing the wound. Xiao Shuo gasped sharply, losing all his earlier imposing demeanor. He raised his hand as if to do something, but I stopped him. "Has the Regent seen clearly? Is this real or fake?" I directly stuck my finger into the sword wound, sinking half my finger inside. Cold sweat dripped down my hairline from the pain, and I stubbornly and angrily stared at him. Xiao Shuo's face darkened once again. He wanted to say something but ultimately couldn't bring himself to speak. In the end, he turned away angrily and stormed off, flicking his sleeve. I pulled my finger out, trembling from the pain, and collapsed weakly onto the couch, unable to move any further. Xiao Shuo did not enter the palace for 3 days. Yu Mai Ren, however, brings me blood-nourishing and injury-healing soups every day, often gazing at me with a furrowed brow. Your Majesty, didn't you hate him? Why did you risk your life to save him? I couldn't be bothered to explain the intricacies of power struggles to her, so I simply replied, you wouldn't understand. Yu Meiren's mood seemed to have turned gloomy as well. How could Xie Yaohuan not come to show her support for such a major event? Dressed in plain attire, seemingly simple yet exquisitely refined, she stood gracefully before me, staring at my injured shoulder, and voiced her ultimate fantasy. Your Majesty, are you trying to perform a bitter flesh scheme in front of him? He holds an irreconcilable hatred for you. Do you think this sword wound can make up for it? Those assassins were sent by your Majesty, weren't they? Do you really think he wouldn't see through such a trick? Xie Yaohuan's demeanor at this moment reminded me of how she treated Lady Yu when she first entered the palace. She clearly thought I was trying to compete for favor. I was so angry I could only laugh. After all this time reciting scriptures in the Buddhist hall, how has the Empress's mind become even more foul? She was so furious that her face turned red. A few days later, Xie Yaohuan invited me to Tai Pond. As soon as I arrived, she plunged headfirst into the water. She emerged from the water and threw a cold, disdainful smile at me. I raised an eyebrow. Could it be that you're trying to frame me for pushing you into the water? Sure enough, this woman buried her head in the water and began flailing wildly. Help, help me. With a single glance, my dragon eyes swept to the other side. Xiao Shuo, approaching leisurely, accompanied by those fickle officials from the political affairs hall. Amid Xie Yaohuan's vigorous cries for help, they all turned to look in our direction. My gaze unexpectedly met Xiao Shuo's from a distance. I could disregard others, but if Xiao Shuo got hold of my weakness, wouldn't he exploit it to the fullest? Last time he didn't manage to kill me, but this time he definitely won't let me off. So I shouted, "Don't be afraid, my queen, I'm here to save you." I plunged into the Tai pool with a splash. As the water enveloped my body, a memory suddenly flashed through my mind, the time when I was 5 years old, my hands tied, a heavy stone tied to my feet, and thrown into the Tai pool. An intense fear washed over me, as if I were bound by a curse, powerless to struggle, and could only watch helplessly as the water swallowed me whole. The water rose above my head, and as the daylight faded into the distance, I couldn't even manage to cry out. Just then, a dark figure descended from above, the water swirling around me, and the next moment, a pair of strong arms lifted me out of the water. You're afraid of water, so why did you jump? I saw the light and breathed the air. I vaguely remember that year. It was also him who jumped into the water to save me, because he touched my undeveloped chest. I slapped him. From then on, our relationship worsened. I won't jump. What if your beloved falsely accuses me of pushing her into the water? Xiao Shuo's face was dark, very dark. He fished me out of the water before turning back to rescue Xie Yaohuan. I knew very well that with an outsider present, he wouldn't dare not rescue me first. No matter how afraid of water I was or whether I could swim, I wasn't going to die. After being fished out, Xie Yaohuan gritted her silver teeth so hard they nearly shattered. Just as Xiao Shuo was about to set her down, she fainted dead away in his arms, her claws tightly wrapped around his neck, refusing to let go no matter how hard he tried to pry them off. What a fine empress you are. Indeed, even at a time like this. You never forget to create an opportunity for me to make things difficult for Xiao Shuo. How about it, Prince Regent? Would you be so kind as to escort the Empress back to Luxian residence on my behalf? Xiao Shuo's face darkened even more, but in the end, he did not break Xie Yaohuan's arm in front of everyone. The fence-sitters in the council hall were quite cunning, keeping their eyes downcast and pretending to see nothing. I could only let out a dry laugh at them. Before I even returned to the Lijing Hall, news from Xiao Shuo's side had already reached me. The regent has ordered the draining of the Tay Pond, so what if your beloved got a little wet? Is it really that serious? I've nearly lost my life here 3 times. And have you heard me complain? Drain the Tay Pond. Hearing Xiao Shuo's command, Xie Yaohuan finally opened her eyes. Shuo, did you save me? Xiao Shuo didn't answer, only looked at her hands. Xie Yaohuan's pretty face flushed red. And she immediately let go of the 2 paws that were wrapped around Xiao Shuo's neck. Xiao Shuo set her down on the ground. Xie Yaohuan, holding her drenched body, was both embarrassed and indignant. You, don't look. Xiao Shuo turned his back and asked, do you have anything to say to me? Xie Yaohuan suddenly burst into tears. His Majesty wants to kill me. Shuo, I'm so scared. What should I do? It's not him. What? To kill you? He doesn't need to resort to any tricks. Xie Yaohuan. A bolt from the blue struck, leaving Xie Yaohuan dazed for a long moment. Moreover, on the day of the palace coup, he might have poisoned me, but he absolutely could not have given me that kind of drug. Xie Yaohuan's face instantly turned deathly pale. Xiao Shuo's eyes have never tolerated any impurity. Xie Yaohuan, what exactly do you want to do? It was you who took the initiative to break off the engagement back then, and now you're acting like this. Before he could finish his words, Xie Yaohuan had already embraced him from behind. Even through his own damp clothes, he could feel her soft body completely unclothed. As a war god of his generation, Xiao Shuo had been trained since childhood on how to subdue an enemy attacking from behind. Although the person behind him at this moment was not an enemy, they were more terrifying than any foe. So, this eternally rigid straight man immediately threw the person behind him over his shoulder, twisted their arm, and pinned them firmly to the cold floor. Then, grabbing a nearby piece of clothing, he covered the person on the ground completely, leaving not even a single finger exposed. Xie Yaohuan, pinned to the ground like a dead pig. Xie Yaohuan couldn't move a muscle. She never dreamed in her wildest dreams that lowering herself to give Xiao Shuo a chance would lead to such an outcome. Just as she was about to burst into a torrent of curses, her clothes were suddenly pulled open. Gradually slipping down to her lower back, feeling the man's scrutinizing gaze, Xie Yaohuan's heart pounded wildly. The previous anger vanished without a trace. Her body suddenly grew weak, and she murmured, Shuo, you're not. What? It wasn't you. That day in the tent, it wasn't you. Xiao Shuo glared angrily, once again covering the woman with the wet clothes, then leaped to jog away as if avoiding some plague. Xie Yaohuan was once again insulted by his actions. The blood that had rushed to her head instantly turned cold. Clutching the clothes to cover herself, she ignored her shame and roared, it was me. How dare you say it wasn't? Xiao Shuo, if you did it, you have to admit it. Even I can't do anything about someone like Xiao Shuo. How could Xie Yaohuan possibly force him to submit? His expression turned cold. Tell me, who is she? I'm only giving you one chance. In the main hall, I soaked myself in hot water, and my heart suddenly skipped a beat. Do you think Xie Yaohuan can win over Xiao Shuo today? Xiangzhu had no time to pay attention to me. She was almost crying her eyes out at the moment. The wound that had just closed has split open again from soaking in water. Your Majesty, just kill me already. Seeing her crying like this, I kind of want to kill her, but it's rare to have such a loyal servant by my side, so I'll let it go. If Xie Yaohuan confirms this illicit affair, it would undoubtedly hand me the sharpest blade. Just as I was lost in thought, a sudden report came from outside the door. Your Majesty, the regent is storming in. Fuck, if you're coming over, why do you have to kill your way over? I quickly got up to put on my clothes, but in my haste, the freshly bandaged wound tore open again, and blood spurted out, staining the white inner garment with a patch of bright red. By the time Xiao Shuo kicked the door open, I hadn't even had time to put on my outer clothes. Xie Yaohuan is not the person I'm looking for, he said angrily. I was so startled that I trembled. Unsure whether it was from his door-kicking action or the words he had spoken, he stared at me and suddenly charged toward me aggressively. My heart was pounding wildly. Does this guy know? Is Xie Yaohuan so useless? Logically, even if Xiao Shuo saw through her tricks, she wouldn't expose me at this point. she would at least wait until she had Xiao Shuo under control. Otherwise, even if I were to be killed by Xiao Shuo, without his protection, I could still easily take her down before that happens. Xiao Shuo's hand reached for my neck, and I instinctively flinched. I'm done for. I'm going to be crushed to death. My imperial dragon neck is really not going to survive this time. I have never shown weakness in front of him before. This is the first time, and probably the last. I know my face must be filled with fear right now, and I can even imagine that he will take the chance to humiliate me before killing me, but I couldn't control myself from being afraid. It felt as though the belief I had been desperately holding on to could no longer withstand the long-standing pressure he had imposed and was about to collapse. Yet at that very moment, he suddenly took 2 steps back. And I felt as if I could breathe again, my eyes fixed on him, filled with anger and wariness. His lips moved a few times, and it took him a long moment to speak. Your Majesty's wound has reopened. I glanced at my shoulder. The blood was soaking through my undergarments, slowly blooming into a bewitching flower on my shoulder and chest. So this guy was looking at that. I quietly breathed a sigh of relief. What did the regent mean by what he just said? Xie Yaohuan is not the woman from that night. I raised an eyebrow defiantly. On what grounds does the regent say this? You have sullied my empress, and now you wish to deny it. Xiao Shuo's brow twitched violently as he regained his imposing demeanor. She does not bear the mark I left. Mark? What mark? How come I don't know about it? I was startled with a chill. Just thinking about that scoundrel leaving a mark in such a situation made me so angry that even my dragon scales were trembling. Damn it, this bastard really thinks he's a stud dog, marking his territory everywhere. My loss of composure made him sneer. Your Majesty is aware, right? I'll give you one night to consider. If your Majesty can't produce that person by tomorrow, I'll have no choice but to reluctantly search the palace. A threat, Xiangzhu. Show me, where is there any mark? I suspect he's trying to deceive me, but I'm not entirely sure, after all. That scoundrel Xiao Shuo's level of depravity can't be measured by normal standards. Xiangzhu scanned my body inch by inch and finally found a faintly visible magnolia flower pattern on my lower back. The magnolia flower is the family emblem of the Lanling Xiao clan. That bastard. I wish I could tear him to pieces. Cut it off. Xiangzhu looked at the injury on my shoulder that hadn't yet healed, then glanced at my lower back. Your Majesty, you must prioritize your imperial health. The regent would never suspect your Majesty, but I detest being marked like an object. This is a trampling upon the dignity of my imperial authority. In the end, Xiangzhu could not resist my insistence and peeled off that piece of skin. It was only the size of a thumb, yet the pain was excruciating. Early the next morning, Xiao Shuo entered the palace. This time, he brought his female general with him, clearly intending to have my consorts undergo a physical examination. I had people watch the Lijing Hall all night, and not a single person entered or left. Your Majesty, you truly have remarkable composure. His hand pressed against the small of my back. He leaned close to my neck, his breath warming my ear. Old grudges and new grievances surged in my heart, and I was overcome with rage. Lord Regent, I will remember this humiliation today. He took a step back, completely unafraid. Instead wearing a radiant smile as if he had finally seized the chance to trample me underfoot. That smile was triumphant, yet it was also deep and chilling. He suddenly stood up straight, waved his hand, and said, "Search the palace." The dashing female general led her female soldiers as they swarmed into my harem, pulling out all the beauties from my 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, verifying each one's identity. Xiao Shuo, however, sat in my Lijing Hall in high spirits. Sipping on this year's Nuala Tribute famous tea, he was accustomed to holding a knife in his right hand and doing things with his left. When he raised his left hand, which had just pressed against my lower back, to pick up the tea, the smile on his face suddenly vanished. He didn't even offer tea. His left hand clenched into a fist, his hawk-like eyes fixed on me. I glared back at him with equal intensity. Lord Regent, if you fail to find anyone in my palace today, how will you account for it to me? He stared at me for a long moment, as if wrestling with some inner turmoil, his voice slightly hoarse. Your Majesty, why are you so certain that I won't find that person? because aside from Xie Yaohuan, it couldn't possibly be anyone else. If it wasn't Xie Yaohuan, then this person simply doesn't exist. Oh, really? The search of the palace didn't take much time, in less than 2 hours. The female soldiers had thoroughly searched all the consorts in my harem. The result was, Regent, there is no one you are looking for. Xiao Shuo stood up, stared at me for a few moments, then turned and left in a huff. I intended to stop him, but as soon as I tried to stand, I nearly fell off the dragon throne. After repeated injuries and frights, my body finally succumbed to illness, my vision blurred, my head heavy and my feet unsteady. Xiangzhu quickly helped me into the back hall. Upon examining the wound, not only was my shoulder bleeding again, but the new injury on my lower back was also oozing blood. The blood had even soaked through the dragon robe. Fortunately, no one had looked at my back, or else the bloodstain would have been impossible to hide. 14. I drifted in and out of consciousness with a fever all day. Late at night, Lady Yu brought me another bowl of soup she had prepared. After taking Xiangzhu's medicine, my spirits improved a bit. Just enough to eat something. Yu Mairen sat by my bedside, holding a spoon and feeding me bite by bite. Xiangzhu, you can go rest now, I will take care of His Majesty here. Xiangzhu had been anxiously watching over me all night without sleep and had been rushing around attending to me all day. Now, the exhaustion was clearly written all over her face. Even someone as hard-hearted as I couldn't bear to see it, so I said with disdain, "Go on, get out. You've been worn down to the point of looking ugly." Xiangzhu had originally intended to stay, but upon hearing the word ugly, she immediately closed her mouth in grievance and tearfully retreated. The regent sent people to search the palace today. Every concubine was stripped and had their lower back examined. Your Majesty, do you know why this is? I half closed my eyes and replied weakly, "He just wants to humiliate me. Don't worry about it." Yu Mairen said nothing more. She silently fed me a bowl of soup, after I had recovered somewhat. I realized she had been unusually quiet that evening. I looked up at her and noticed that her stunningly beautiful face seemed veiled in a shadow, appearing somewhat gloomy. "Did they bully you?" I asked. She forced a faint smile. "I am not afraid of them bullying me. I am afraid of the regent bullying your Majesty." I laughed, still wanting to maintain a bit of dignity in front of my consort. "My dear consort, what are you saying? Even if he is the regent, how could he possibly bully me? I am the sovereign of the highest order." "Oh, really? So the regent wants to search for the person who attempted to assassinate him that night. If it was an assassin, why would he have seen their lower back? And why is he so certain it was a woman? Could it be?" My eyes snapped open wide. "That's right. By making such a grand show of searching the palace, isn't Xiao Shuong making people suspect that the assassin was one of the imperial consorts? And checking the lower back, isn't that practically announcing to the world that he has seen that woman's body?" At that moment, my resentment grew even stronger. "I must kill him." Yu Mairen silently set down the soup bowl and picked up another bowl of nourishing tonic. She stirred it with a spoon to disperse the heat. She suddenly spoke. "Wasn't it your Majesty who attempted to assassinate him that day?" I jolted and stared intently at Yu Mairen. Yu Mairen's expression didn't change at all. She continued stirring the soup, scooped up a spoonful, blew on it, and brought it to my lips, her face wearing the familiar smile I was used to. I didn't drink it, keeping my eyes fixed on her. For the first time, I realized that I didn't understand my Yu Mairen at all. I thought it was a pawn in the palm of my hand. But one day it suddenly leaped out of my control and transformed into the one manipulating the game. I didn't eat, and she didn't force me. Still smiling at me with a beauty that could topple cities and captivate nations, while I was preparing the soup for your Majesty, I saw Xiangzhu disposing of the medicinal herbs. I have a basic understanding of herbal medicine, and out of curiosity, I took a glance. I happened to see ginseng, white atractalodes, Chinese angelica, white peony root, dried tangerine peel. I don't understand herbal medicine, but I know these are excellent ingredients for replenishing energy and nourishing the blood. I am injured. What is wrong with taking some blood-nourishing medicine? She smiled, her face slightly cold. Nothing is wrong. It's just that these medicines combined can also stabilize a pregnancy. With a bang, I knocked over her medicine bowl, But it was this surge of anger that also triggered the effects of the drug within my body. My limbs grew weak, and I found it difficult even to sit up. No matter how foolish I was, I could sense that something was wrong. You, my Ren, what have you done to me? I had trusted her so completely. Yet in the end, Your Majesty, don't panic, I was just afraid you might move around and hurt yourself again. The next second, she took off her dress and revealed a male body. The beauty I've been raising for 3 years is actually a man. You, my Ren, pinched my chin, a fierce glare flashing in her eyes. I'm done pretending. The emperor-grade little cabbage I've been nurturing for 3 years was actually taken by that bastard Xiao Shuo. I wanted to kill him, and you even blocked the sword for him. Now, you're even taking measures to protect the pregnancy. What, are you so eager to give birth to his child? I could no longer describe my feelings at this moment with mere fear. You, my Ren, gently stroked my injured shoulder, her breath as sharp as an ice blade. Your Majesty, you've disappointed me so much. Who exactly are you? This is definitely not the cunning and tactics that a simple beauty without family backing should possess. You, my Ren, did not answer. I only felt my body becoming increasingly unresponsive. I pick at the wounds on my body, trying to use the pain to stimulate my nerves and wake myself up, but he grabs my wrist, the fury in his eyes almost burning me to ashes. Your Majesty, the child you should bear is mine, and you should let this child rule the world. Only then will you be worthy of the Li family, which your Yuan family destroyed. The Li family, you are a remnant of the previous dynasty. At this moment, I finally understood. Unfortunately, it was all too late. Your Majesty, you are mine. Please remember this forever. The effects of the drug kicked in, and my head felt so dizzy and heavy. In a daze, I seemed to see the door burst open, and I thought I heard Xiao Shuo's voice. Xiao Shuo kicked away my Yu Mai Ren. And driven by the effects of the drug, I embraced him. This was probably a dream, and in the end, I would surely be pierced through the heart by his sword once again. Ha ha ha, how ironic. I woke up the next evening. My mind was a bit fuzzy, but the marks on my body told me that everything from last night wasn't a dream. Either I was taken advantage of by Yu Mai Ren, or I took advantage of Xiao Shuo, who suddenly barged in, real or fake, half dreaming and half awake, though I couldn't tell. What should and shouldn't have happened had already happened. I didn't see the poppies, but I heard the sound of sharpening outside. I put on my clothes and leaned against the wall to go out, only to see Xiao Shuo sitting on the threshold of the Lijing Hall, sharpening his dragon-slaying saber. The entire Lijing Hall was like a ghost realm, with not a single person in sight. He glanced at me and continued sharpening the saber. I slumped my sore and weak body on the dragon throne, staring fixedly at him. Did you kill Yu Mai Ren? He escaped. There's a secret passage in the palace. He said he didn't want to see me. I stared at the dragon-slaying saber in his hand. Last time, you took Xie Yaohuan's medicine and had your way with me. This time, I fell for Yu Mai Ren's drug and had my way with you. We're even now. Bang! Xiao Shuo kicked over the nearby tea table. His eyes blazed with overwhelming fury, fixed directly on me. I suppose the fact that I am a woman and have slept with him twice has completely shattered his worldview. For a moment, I actually felt a bit sorry for him. Look at the dragon-slaying sword in his hand, polished to a glossy sheen. It must have taken him at least a few hours to sharpen it. TSK. Honestly, my dragon neck isn't that tough. You wouldn't need such a sharp blade to cut through it. So eager to kill me. Are you? He didn't answer, only sharpened the dragon-slaying saber with a louder grinding sound. I am pregnant. The child is yours. His face, so handsome it could anger both gods and mortals, twisted in front of me. Life, after all, isn't complete without being struck by lightning a few times. 17. Xiao Shuo not only didn't kill me, but he also took good care of me, providing me with delicious food and drink. Probably because the child in my belly is the only remaining descendant of the Xiao family. If he were to harm me, the ancestors of the Xiao family in the afterlife might just rise up and strike down this unfilial descendant. But after all, he and I are mortal enemies, and he has no choice but to take such good care of me. The thought of his frustration brings me immense satisfaction. With him covering for me, I can justifiably ignore court affairs and avoid meeting with ministers. These months of pregnancy have surprisingly been the most leisurely and carefree days I've lived in my 20 years. Xiao Shuo had already thought it through for me. He didn't publicize the matter of consortue, but instead placed her under house arrest in the Orchid Palace on the charge of offending the emperor. After the child is born, it will be taken from the Orchid Palace, and she will be erased under the pretense of her having died from postpartum hemorrhage. I never expected Xiao Shuo to think so far ahead. For the sake of his descendants, he truly went to great lengths. He no longer sharpened his knife in front of me. On the contrary, he became increasingly gentle toward me. During the months of morning sickness, he would review memorials at the Lijing Hall during the day and sneak into the palace at night to hold me as I slept. Sometimes, he would gently touch the scars on my shoulders and waist and ask if they still hurt. I, in turn, would ask him, "Will you kill me after the child is born?" He looked at me somewhat annoyed. If I said I wouldn't, would you believe me? Of course I wouldn't believe it. We've been at odds for so many years, always coexisting peacefully. I doubt even the heavens would believe it. Xie Yaohuan found out I was pregnant 3 months later. I don't know what Xiao Shuo did to her on the day she jumped into the Tay Pond, but she suddenly shaved her head and shut herself in the Buddhist hall for 3 months. 3 months later, she came out and found me, saying she had figured it out. She wanted to tell Xiao Shuo that the person that day was me. She said she couldn't have Xiao Shuo, and it was all my fault. She wanted Xiao Shuo to tear me to pieces, and then there was no and then. Xiao Shuo personally brought a bowl of soup and a jar of sour plums, and in front of Xie Yaohuan, he said, "Drink the soup, and if you feel nauseous, have a sour plum." Xie Yaohuan's eyes nearly fell into my soup. She pointed a trembling finger at me and Xiao Shuo. You too, you shameless couple." Perhaps her gaze that day was too piercing, as Xiao Shuo ordered her confined to Luxian residence, forbidding her from leaving without summons. The birth of our precious child was extremely sudden. The day before, Xiao Shuo had cleared the imperial garden and asked Xiangzhu to accompany me for a walk outside. Unexpectedly, Xie Yaohuan escaped from Luxian residence and pushed me into the Tay Pond. I always said the Tay Pond was unlucky for me, but I never thought it would still bring me misfortune even after being drained. When I fell, although the edge was less than 6 feet deep, my water broke from the impact. Blood gushed out like spring water seeping from the ground. Xiao Shuo was terrified out of his wits. Holding me tightly, he ran frantically while comforting me, saying everything would be fine, that he was here, and that I would be all right, and so would the child. For a moment, I thought to myself, since he would kill me after the child was born anyway, why not take his offspring with me to death? I couldn't let that cheap father off easy. But this child is a life I carried for 9 months. No matter how violent I am, I can't bring myself to let go. I risked my life to give birth to him. But in the end, I suffered a hemorrhage, just as Xiao Shuo predicted the fate of Yu Mairen. It's all because of your jinxing mouth. Now I'm bleeding heavily. Are you satisfied? I cursed him with my last bit of strength, as if by cursing him, I could stay conscious. I couldn't accept dying alone without dragging him into the underworld with me. Miraculously, I actually managed to pull through. When I opened my eyes again, Xiao Shuo was unshaven and haggard, looking like a completely different person. He placed the child beside me and, without saying a word, left the palace. For nearly half a month, he did not appear again at Lijing Hall. It took me 3 months to fully recover. When he came to the palace, he told me he had filled in the Tay pool, so that place would never harm me again. He also said that Xie Yaohuan had gone mad, so he confined her to the cold palace. He didn't kill the one who nearly caused the death of me and our child, probably out of lingering affection. Xie Yaohuan hanged herself from a beam just a few days after being sent to the cold palace. He rushed into the main hall, and I made it very clear to him that I was the one who had sent someone to do it. I am the kind of person who cannot tolerate injustice and prefers not to delay revenge. He didn't say anything, but he slaughtered the Xie family overnight. I was utterly shocked by this. Although I haven't attended court for a long time, I am well aware of the affairs of the previous dynasty. After Xie Yaohuan fell out of favor and moved to Luxian residence to live a life of vegetarianism and Buddhist devotion, the Xie family could no longer sit still. They allied with several prominent noble families in an attempt to force me to abdicate and have Xiao Shuo ascend the throne. This way, they could remove me as an obstacle, allowing Xie Yaohuan and Xiao Shuo to legitimately rekindle their old flame. And now, Xiao Shuo has annihilated the Xie family, and from that day on, he came to the Lijing Hall every night to stay. He didn't do anything, just simply held me and our son while we slept. It was as if we were a family of three. In the morning, when he took me to the morning court session, he would even kiss our son and my forehead. To be honest, it gave me goosebumps, but I never once avoided it. I suddenly couldn't understand which game Xiao Shuo was playing. However, that didn't stop me from planning his demise. On our son's first birthday, I asked him to take us, mother and child, for an outing. At the Wuxiang cliff of Siming Mountain, assassins were already lying in ambush, waiting for us to appear so they could swarm and attack him. As long as he dies, I can reclaim the throne. With a child, I, as the emperor, will have no more worries about the future. What does it matter if I never enter the harem again, mourning the death of the Yu beauty excessively? When the child grows up, I will abdicate the throne to him. My mission will then be complete, and I will no longer have to navigate the treacherous waters of power while carrying the ever-present threat of my female identity, which could shatter my soul at any moment. I had envisioned it beautifully, but reality once again slapped me hard with a resounding blow. These assassins were no longer the ones I had arranged, they were remnants of the previous dynasty. They not only intended to kill Xiao Shuo but also me and the child. To save us, Xiao Shuo was struck by multiple blades. Until this moment, seeing each strike of the blade land on him, I realized that his death did not bring me joy. Even seeing him bleed, my heart still ached, as if tightly gripped by iron pliers. In the end, my son and I were saved. While he was struck down the cliff, doomed for eternity, when his body was found at the bottom of the cliff, it was already in a state of utter ruin. His face had been gnawed by a bear, making it completely unrecognizable. His hands and feet were gone, and even his belly had been torn open. I glanced at his corpse and had nightmares for 3 years straight. I wanted to forget this person, but the more I tried, the more I couldn't. Especially as I watched the child grow up, he increasingly resembled the handsome and graceful figure he had been in his youth. But time always fades everything. By the 5th year, my memory of him began to blur. Without his coercion, sitting on the throne didn't seem all that meaningful. It's just that the child is too young. I can't just let go. When my son was 6 years old, I took him and the civil and military officials to the imperial mausoleum to pay respects to our ancestors. This time, I was assassinated. I watched myself die, pierced by countless arrows. Even from across the mountain, I could tell how pale my son's little face had turned from fear. I turned around and slapped the resurrected Xiao Shuo. What exactly are you trying to do? With a cold face, he hoisted me over his shoulder. Nothing. I just missed you. I've endured it for 6 years, and I can't take it anymore. He carried me back to the mountain cottage and, without a word, tore my clothes. He hurt me, and in anger, I bit his shoulder. It didn't hurt him, but it made my teeth ache. Xiao Shuo, are you fucking an animal or what? His eyes suddenly reddened. I am a fucking animal. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so fixated on you, not even caring about the grudge of my father's death. I had never seen him like this before, and suddenly, I remembered those 6 years he was gone. A strange feeling inexplicably rose in my heart, but then, he suddenly covered my eyes. Don't look at me with that expression, or I might think you have feelings for me too. In the end, he whispered in my ear, Yuan Zhao, you're too cunning. His voice was low and hoarse, filled with helplessness, as if it also carried a hint of resignation. 3 days later, he dressed me in women's clothing and styled my hair into a married woman's bun. He looked at me for a long moment and said 2 words, "You look good." Before I could even react, his ears turned red first. He took me to the temple fair. This was my first time visiting a temple fair, and it was also my first time walking on the street in women's clothing. For the first time, I actually felt a sense of novelty. And along with it, a bit of helplessness. He held my hand, carefully avoiding the bustling crowd, and bought me a stick of candied hawthorn. This also seemed to be my first time eating candied hawthorn. I had struggled in the highest echelons of power in the imperial palace for over 20 years. Though I seemingly possessed the entire world, it felt as if I had nothing at all. Only at this moment could I say with certainty that, at the very least, this stick of candied hawthorn was mine. No one could take it away. You like it? Then I'll buy it for you every day from now on. Xiao Shuo lowered his head, looking at me with a smile, his eyes clearer and more transparent than I had ever seen before. Yuan Zhao, stay, let's live together, okay? You already made me get pierced by 10,000 arrows in front of everyone. How am I supposed to fake my death and come back now? I was clearly furious, but for some reason, I felt a sense of relief at this moment, a relief I had never experienced in over 20 years. It's just a pity for all those beauties in my palace who never had the chance to be enjoyed. Xiao Shuo, if I really stayed, I might just kill you one day. Xiao Shuo, however, suddenly looked up at the sky without getting angry. He said that during those years in the western frontier, the thought of returning to the capital to kill me was what kept him alive. Later, he wanted to let me go. But after wandering alone for 6 years, he changed his mind. If I ever have to go to hell, I still want to drag you down with me. Suddenly, he stared at me with affection in his eyes and said, with that look in his eyes, I thought he had changed and would say something deeply moving. But a dog's mouth cannot produce ivory. A few days later, the entire court held a funeral for me. The whole nation was in mourning. He took me on horseback to watch myself being buried. Even from across the mountain, I knew that I and he were buried together. The Grand Secretary of the Hanlin Academy even gave this mausoleum a particularly infuriating name, the Mausoleum of the Two Sages. I was furious. How many people have you planted in the court? He didn't answer, only smiled. I'll take you for a drink. A new Drunken Immortal Pavilion has opened in the east of the city, and their Drunken Immortal chicken is absolutely unparalleled. The king of the nation has just been buried, and you're going to a restaurant to eat chicken. Aren't you afraid of being caught and beheaded? He laughed and looked at me. You must have some misunderstanding about your own great achievements. Me, what on earth? Suddenly, I understood what he meant when we arrived at Drunken Immortal Tower. I wasn't the only one here for the chicken. Today, Drunken Immortal Tower was packed with people. Not just there, the taverns next door were also bustling with activity, with queues of people waiting to drink. It's as if today isn't a day of national mourning for the emperor's funeral, but rather a day of celebration for some joyous event. After returning from the Drunken Immortal Pavilion, I was depressed for a month. Although I may be a tyrant, I have also done a few things that benefited the country and its people. Why is no one remembering any of my good deeds? Because of this, I completely gave up the idea of going back to fake my death. I don't know when it started, but it began to snow in the mountains. As the weather turned cold, the shoulder that had been pierced before started to ache, a pain like ants gnawing at the bone. I became increasingly unwilling to move. Xiao Shuo went down the mountain early in the morning and hadn't returned by nightfall. Before leaving, he prepared roasted chicken and old duck soup for me, keeping them warm on a small clay stove. I ate them all day until I grew tired of the taste and couldn't resist going out to take a look. As soon as I opened the door, I saw him returning through the wind and snow. Were you worried? He asked, his eyes shining. I didn't answer, not wanting to engage with him. He entered the room and told me to keep my distance, saying he was carrying a heavy chill. I asked him where he had been. He said that today his son ascended the throne, and there was an unruly old man who wanted to act as regent. It must be the Duke of Zhenghua, right? When I ascended the throne, he also had the idea of monopolizing state affairs as a regent. I found an excuse to throw his son into prison. Now his trying to act as regent isn't that all because you set a bad example, I said. Xiao Shuo wasn't annoyed either. He warmed himself by the charcoal fire before reaching for my hand. Noticing my hands were a bit cold, he took out a large cloak and wrapped it around me. Does the wound still hurt? I had Xiangzhu prepare a new ointment. As if suddenly remembering something, he chuckled softly. When you were a child, you were always the one most afraid of pain. How come now you dare to take a sword for me? Not only that, but you even dared to dig your fingers into the wound. He was a little angry, but also somewhat amused. I angrily retorted, After staying in that kind of ruthless place for so long, you can't afford to be sentimental either. He pressed his forehead against mine and chuckled softly. It won't happen again, never again. For some reason, those words made me want to cry. I turned my head away, not wanting him to see my emotions. How is Yu-Mi-Ren doing? Xiao Shuo frowned. You're still thinking about him, I snapped. He's a remnant of the previous dynasty, why would I think about him? Aren't you keeping an eye on him? What if he goes and tries to steal our son's throne? Just then, a knock sounded at the door. I pushed him aside and went to answer it. Who is it? Remnants of the previous dynasty, a very crisp and loud response. But, the murderous aura is so heavy, my hand on the door latch suddenly didn't dare to move. Xiao Shuo came over and opened the door. My Yu-Mi-Ren stood in the wind and snow, holding 2 old hens in her hands. Her gaze bypassed Xiao Shuo and looked at me with a face full of ice chips. Utterly indifferent, I looked at him, feeling a bit awkward, especially since I had just been talking behind his back. Xiao Shuo had told me that Yu-Mi-Ren never sent anyone to assassinate me and had even cleaned house by getting rid of all those who tried to kill me. I was still wary of him, which felt a bit unfair, but I had no choice. After all, he was a remnant of the previous dynasty. What if one day he decided to go after the throne again? My son is still so young. Yu-Mi-Ren gets angry as soon as she sees me. She puts down 2 chickens and says, I heard you're pregnant again. These 2 old hens, stew them with some astragalus and red dates. With that, she turned and left, as if to say, out of sight, out of mind. Xiao Shuo brought the chickens inside, closed the door, and shielded me from the wind and snow outside. I asked him, when did I get pregnant again? I ran into him outside the canyon yesterday and had a fight with him. I just casually mentioned it, but who knew he'd take it to heart? Xiao Shuo turned back and smiled at me. It was bound to happen sooner or later, wasn't it? Seeing my furrowed brows, he quickly grabbed the 2 chickens and headed to the backyard to slaughter them, eagerly asking whether I preferred them steamed or braised. Snowflakes landed on his shoulders. I remembered that he, too, had a wound on his shoulder. In the same spot as mine, the sword injury he took for me that year at Wuxiang Cliff. In a few more years, our son will be old enough to take a consort and establish his empress. Do you have any young ladies in mind? I leaned on the windowsill, propping my chin as I thought. The Cao family has 2 promising ones. We can observe them for a few years. The Kui family also has 2 good ones. I'll find a way to keep them for our son. He looked up at me, his exceptionally handsome face full of tenderness and affection. Suddenly, the wind swept up the snow at his feet, blurring my vision. This scene seems a bit beautiful. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. After being married for over a year, I finally discovered that my husband is a woman. When I first learned this secret, I was utterly shocked. But I quickly calmed down. So what if she's a woman? Once I stepped into this life of luxury, I never planned to leave. When I was 7 or 8 years old, my father was just a minor official of the 7th rank. But our family lived quite comfortably, with all the necessities of life: firewood, rice, oil, salt, clothing, food, housing, and transportation fully provided for. Later, after my mother passed away, my father remarried. My stepmother despised me and restricted my expenses in every way. After giving birth to a son, she became even more domineering. My father's attention was entirely focused on his son, and he turned a blind eye to these matters. Long-term malnutrition left me exceptionally frail. Standing next to my well-fed, rosy-cheeked younger brother, the contrast was stark, making it obvious to outsiders the disparity in our treatment at home. To avoid gossip, my stepmother simply confined me to the backyard, and my father tacitly allowed it. My heart felt desolate. If things continued like this, by the time I turned 18, I would likely be married off to just anyone, perhaps as a second wife to some family, or even as a concubine, to someone possibly older than my own father. This life of mine might just end up like that. But it seemed the heavens could no longer stand by and watch, unwilling to let me suffer a miserable fate, and bestowed upon me an immense surprise. Last winter, My uncle approached my father and said that my grandfather had arranged a childhood betrothal for me early on. The family in question was a close friend of my grandfather's from his military days. He started out as an unknown soldier, but later followed the Prince of Wu, who is now the emperor, and achieved great military feats. In the end, he was even enfeoffed as the Marquis of Yongchang, with the title being hereditary and non-revocable. My childhood betrothal was to the son of the Marquis of Yongchang. When I first heard this news, my heart uncontrollably raced, blood rushed to my brain, and my ears even began to ring. I can't believe such a wonderful thing has happened to me, until I put on the wedding dress, covered my head with the red veil, and felt my cold, stiff hands warmed in his palms. My husband is humble, polite, and exceptionally handsome. When mischievous children teased her about these things, he would always scold them angrily. I am a man of 7 feet, and you children are nothing but insignificant. He even gestured with his hand to emphasize the height. The child burst into loud sobs on the spot, thinking no one had seen. My husband finished dealing with the child and, feeling quite pleased, was about to leave. Little did he expect that, upon turning around, he would see me standing not far away. Covering my mouth and giggling, she seemed startled, then somewhat awkwardly tried to explain. The child fell down by himself. I walked over and draped the cloak in my hand over her without exposing her lie. The spring chill is still lingering. The kitchen has prepared some black chicken soup. Would you like to try some? My lord's eyes lit up at the mention of black chicken soup. Over the past year or so, my husband and I have gotten along well, and I have tried to draw closer to her. But there has always been something between us that, no matter how hard I try, I cannot push aside. We can't exactly be described as a harmonious couple. It's more like we treat each other with respect. Besides that, my husband is also frail and sickly, unable to consummate our marriage. She said it was an illness left over from the chaos of war in the past 2 years, and I always believed that to be the case. Over this past year, I have done my utmost to care for her, searching for all kinds of medicinal diets and remedies, hoping she would recover her health at least enough to consummate our marriage, and ideally to have a child or 2. Now that I think about it, it just seems ridiculous. What kind of young energy is a woman supposed to strengthen? When I first discovered it and felt the anger rising, I did consider whether I should expose her, but I quickly dismissed the idea, since the general's manner dared to let a female disguised as male heir marry a woman. They must have had a backup plan. By then, the news might not even leave this door before I'm silenced. Even if I really reported it and the general's household was punished, and I gained my freedom, I ask you, who would want someone who has been married to a woman? Moreover, I simply cannot do it. Even if she deceived me, the food, clothing, and daily necessities I've enjoyed in the general's residence over the past year have been real. My father-in-law doesn't involve himself in household matters. And my mother-in-law is kind and not overly strict. If I were in another household, how could I receive such treatment? Back when I was in the Fang family, I had a place to live and could lead a stable life. As for my husband's family, it didn't matter much to me. Now, I'm fortunate to have entered the general's residence, which is 1,000 times better than I had imagined. Although my husband is a woman, we cannot consummate the marriage, and in the future, I will certainly have no sons or daughters. At least I don't have to endure being mistreated by someone decades older than me. Thinking about it this way, I actually felt a long sigh of relief in my heart. However, in the end, there is still an impact. Madam, the medicinal soup is ready. The maid's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. I gathered the medicinal soup recipe from various sources and spent a great deal of effort refining it to make it both delicious and nourishing. My husband enjoys drinking it very much, and I am happy to watch her drink it, but now, it seems unnecessary. I exhaled the turbid air in my heart. Pour it out. Okay, pouring. The maid thought she had misheard and looked up at me in surprise to confirm. Madam, forget it, take it to the study. It contains many valuable medicinal herbs. It would be a shame to waste it. In the past, I would always personally bring the medicinal meal into the study. So the maid naturally assumed I would go with her. She held the bowl and waited for a while, only to find me still sitting in my seat, with no intention of moving at all. Madam, I'll take this over first then. My tone was indifferent. The maid suppressed the questions in her heart and carried the items to the study. Shenmo was practicing calligraphy in the study when he heard movement outside the door, so he set down his brush, seeing the maid who came to deliver the food box. Took the soup bowl from inside and finished it in just a few sips. Where is the madam? The maid hesitated for a moment. The madam seems to be feeling a bit unwell. Shenmo nodded to indicate he understood. The weather today is exceptionally bright, and it's a day off, so there's no need to attend court. In the past, I would have clung to my husband all day while she wrote. I would stay by her side, and when we got tired, we would go out to the courtyard for some fresh air or take a stroll in the garden. Sometimes, I would even beg her to take me out of the estate for a walk. At first, my husband would say that I could go and do my own things and didn't need to accompany her. I thought she was being considerate. But now I realize she was just eager to keep her distance from me. Although I've already decided to pretend as if nothing has happened and continue living as before, I still feel heavy-hearted and upset. In the short term, I truly don't know how to face her. Now I just want to stay in the room and space out, taking it easy. Before I knew it, it was already time for dinner. In the meantime, I also sent away the doctor who came to check my pulse. At the Yongchang Marquis Manor, dinner is only eaten in the main hall on rest days. At other times, meals are prepared in individual small kitchens. Today, I really have no appetite, so I put down my bowl and chopsticks early. My husband must have noticed me. Glancing in my direction from time to time, I naturally sensed her gaze, but I pretended not to see it and didn't turn around. Father, Mother, isn't feeling well. I'll take her back to our room first. After my father-in-law responded, we headed towards our own courtyard, and along the way, neither of us said a word. After returning to the room, I sat in my seat without saying a word. She sat beside me, wanting to say something, but couldn't bring herself to speak for a long time. I could clearly feel the air growing still. Before, when we were together, I used to talk a lot, doing everything I could to catch my husband's attention, and he would occasionally respond with a word or two. At first glance, it seemed like we were communicating well, but in reality, if I didn't speak up, the atmosphere between us would become awkward. As a woman, my husband must have felt very uncomfortable when she was with me. But the more she acted this way, the less I wanted to speak. Just when I thought we would remain in this stalemate until dawn, my husband finally spoke. Are you feeling unwell today? Her gentle voice was filled with concern. I was taken aback for a moment, and a warm current still flowed uncontrollably in my heart. I just didn't sleep well. And I'm a bit tired. There's no need for you to worry, my husband. That's good. The conversation ended, and the air froze again. You rest first. Before she could finish her sentence, I cut her off directly. Will you be reading 100 pages today, my husband? She was taken aback, seemingly not expecting me to show such obvious emotion today. I know I'm coming across as aggressive and lacking the grace of a well-bred lady, but for some reason, my emotions got the better of me today. And some words slipped out uncontrollably. When we first got married, we didn't sleep together. It was me who wanted to get close to her, to take care of her. Using the excuse of feeling cold and weak, I forced my way onto her bed, but 8 out of 10 times, she would only come to bed after I had fallen asleep. And even then, she slept fully clothed, of course, with someone lying beside her who could expose her identity at any moment. Anyone would be cautious and guarded. My husband remained silent for a long time. I thought she would go to the study to read as usual, but this time she actually stayed. In the quiet of the night, I gazed at her profile, unable to fall asleep for a long time. A few days passed, and my attitude toward my husband remained the same, neither warm nor cold, and I no longer took the initiative to prepare medicinal meals for her. Every time my husband saw me, he seemed to have something to say but hesitated to speak. And I pretended not to see it. 2 more days passed, and she probably couldn't hold back any longer. Seemingly unintentional, but actually deliberate, she brought it up. A while ago, the medicinal dishes made in the kitchen were quite good. I wonder which cook was responsible for them. Her, the cook. All this time, I thought it was the cook preparing meals for her. Already in a bad mood, I grew even angrier. Fired, She still wanted to say something, but I glared her into silence. This was not the proper etiquette for a lady of the household, but I no longer cared what others thought. 2 more days passed, and the maid mysteriously told me that my husband was going to take me to a wonderful place. On the surface, I pretended not to care, but deep down, I was secretly looking forward to it. I boarded a carriage and, after a bumpy ride, arrived at Lake Tong in the southern part of the city. Following the maid's guidance, I stepped onto a pleasure boat. As I lifted the curtain, a melodious sound of a zither reached my ears. The tone of the instrument was unique, as if I had heard it somewhere before. My gaze fell upon the person playing the zither. It was actually my husband himself. As the music faded, I looked into his smiling eyes, and an incredible guess surfaced in my mind. Happy birthday. I stood frozen in place, not knowing how to react. Today is my birthday. But how could anyone remember my birthday? I, who have always been forgotten, how could someone be offering me blessings? She slowly walked over and pulled me to the seat in front of the Qin. As I got closer, I realized that this Qin was actually the treasured ancient Qin from Fengju Pavilion, worth a fortune. Do you like it? It's for you, husband. My voice was already a bit choked up. This gift is too precious. Seeing me cry, she became somewhat flustered. Why are you crying? Is it because you don't like this birthday gift? She wiped the tears from my face, her movements gentle and full of affection. I wanted to say I really like it, but my throat felt as if stuffed with cotton, and I couldn't speak no matter what. After a long while, I finally caught my breath and spoke between sobs. Thank you, my husband, I really like it. She visibly breathed a sigh of relief. Would you like to test the tone? She asked with eager eyes. Okay. By the time we returned to the general's residence, it was already evening. After washing up, my husband didn't go to the study as usual but instead said to me, I'm sorry, My heart skipped a beat. I don't know, you've always been the one preparing the medicinal meals. I immediately felt a sense of relief. Then, I shook my head to show that I didn't mind. My husband, I am very happy today. As long as you're happy, my husband, she replied softly. Can you hold me? She didn't say anything. No one has ever remembered my birthday, and today I am truly happy. A pair of hands promptly pulled me into a warm embrace. Sleep now, she said softly, patting me gently as if soothing a child to sleep. Resting on her arm, my heartbeat unconsciously quickened. It felt as if a net was entangling me. I couldn't break free, nor did I want to. Willingly falling into this gentle trap. Late at night, moonlight streamed in through the window, casting a soft glow on her face. I could no longer contain the surging emotions within me and pressed a kiss onto her soft lips. Then, contentedly, I rested my head in the crook of her arm and drifted into a peaceful slumber. What does it matter that she's a woman? As long as her identity remains undisclosed, she is my husband for the day. Being close to one's own husband is only natural. However, I didn't notice that after I fell asleep, a pair of eyes watched me for a long time. The next day, I received news that my husband had gone on a business trip out of town. She didn't even have time to come back and pack her things. Instead, she had Xiao Sai pack them up and send them to her directly. Although I was surprised, I didn't notice anything wrong. Another month passed. During this month, I wrote letters every few days and sent her some things through others, worried that she might not be eating well or staying warm over there, but for some reason, there was never a reply. In a few more days, it will be the Empress Dowager's 70th birthday. If my calculations are correct, my husband should arrive today. I suppressed the joy in my heart and prepared the things she would need upon her return. Filled with anticipation, I eagerly looked forward to her arrival, frequently glancing toward the door. However, even late into the night, there was no sign of her. I sent someone to inquire and only then found out that she had already settled down to sleep in the study. This time she came back as if she were a different person, with no trace of the warmth in her eyes from before, only a cold question and answer demeanor. Such days continued until the day of the Empress Dowager's 70th birthday. The banquet hadn't started yet. My husband was over there exchanging pleasantries about official matters with some people, and I could only wait idly in my seat. A young man in blue seemed to be chatting with her particularly well, the two of them laughing and talking happily. She only came over just before the banquet was about to begin. Husband, who was that person just now? Jong Song. A childhood playmate. That person seemed to sense something and glanced over this way, smiling. My husband also noticed and returned a smile before taking his seat. That person also saw me, smiling as well, but the smile didn't reach their eyes. After the banquet began, I kept feeling eyes scanning over me, but when I looked up to search, I didn't notice anything unusual. Halfway through the banquet, the main events were mostly over, and the Empress Dowager left the venue. However, since there were still royal relatives present, the banquet continued, and the atmosphere became much more relaxed than before. I had just drunk quite a bit of fruit wine. So I asked the palace maid to take me to a place where I could relieve myself early. After many twists and turns, I finally reached the restroom, but when I came out, the palace maid was nowhere to be seen. I waited for a moment at the spot, but the palace maid still didn't appear, so I had to rely on my memory to find my way back. However, the layout of the palace was just too complex, and I soon lost my sense of direction. Moreover, there isn't a single trace of other palace maids or eunuchs around here. Feeling somewhat discouraged, I casually found a stone bench to sit on, watching to see if anyone would pass by. After sitting there for the time it takes 2 incense sticks to burn, just as I was about to change my spot, I heard some unusual movement from the direction of the rockery. Driven by curiosity, I slowly moved closer. The sound of movement grew louder, and as I approached to listen carefully, I could hear the rustling of clothes and muffled sobs. Looking past a corner, the scene inside came into view. A tall palace maid was seen gripping the chin of a shorter palace maid, forcing her to look up. With her other hand, she restrained the shorter maid's hands, pressing them against the rock wall of the artificial hill, and kissed her fiercely. Their lips and teeth intertwined, and a flush spread across their faces. My eyes widened instantly. The boldest thing I had ever done in my life was secretly stealing a kiss from my husband in the dark. The scene before me was simply too shocking. My cheeks flushed with heat, and I stood frozen in place, unsure how to react. The young palace maid was the first to notice the outsider's arrival. With tears welling in her eyes, she struggled desperately, pushed the senior maid away, and hurriedly ran off. The senior palace maid watched the young maid's retreating figure, still feeling somewhat unsatisfied. Only when the figure had run far away did she finally withdraw her gaze. Within the palace, it was common for maids and eunuchs to form intimate relationships, but such matters were usually kept out of the open. Such bold behavior, and remaining unflustered even when discovered, was truly rare. The senior maid's gaze lingered on me for a moment before she finally spoke. "Madam, are you well?" I had never seen this palace maid before, yet she knew who I was. I did not respond, and she continued speaking. "Madam, weren't you attending the banquet? How did you end up near Renquan Palace? Did you get lost?" The familiar tone made me feel even more strange. "I came out to use the restroom and got lost. Go through this path and keep to the right, thank you. If there is nothing else, I shall take my leave now." "Wait, aren't you afraid I might tell others about what just happened?" The senior palace maid smiled without saying a word, seemingly confident that I wouldn't speak of it. What a strange palace maid. Following the path she pointed out, I returned to the banquet. However, the seat that should have been mine was occupied by someone else. This person was the one who had been chatting happily with my husband earlier. I don't know what this person said, but it actually made my husband burst into laughter. She had never laughed like this in front of me before, nor had she ever let her guard down in my presence. I was gone for half an hour, and she didn't even notice anything was wrong, still here chatting and laughing with others. My heart ached with bitterness, and for a moment, I stood there, unsure whether I should go over. "It's my sister-in-law, she's back." Hearing this man's words, my husband finally turned to look at me. In an instant, the smile on his face vanished as if by magic, returning to the indifferent expression he had before so quickly that I almost thought the earlier smile was an illusion. My heart felt as if it were being squeezed, and I could barely catch my breath. The man left, but I had no desire to go over. My spot was tainted with someone else's scent. Fortunately, the banquet was announced to be over at that moment. On the way back, we rode in the same carriage, But we still remained silent, exchanging no words, watching her figure heading toward the study. My heart ached unbearably. I truly couldn't understand what had gone wrong. Everything had been fine before she went on her business trip. Wait, before the business trip, that night, she couldn't sleep. Now everything makes sense. I took a deep breath to calm the turmoil in my heart. So be it. Spending a lifetime treating each other with respect is also quite good. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed, and the weather began to turn cold. I followed my mother-in-law to the Jingwa temple to offer incense and pray for blessings. Perhaps out of a guilty conscience, my mother-in-law treated me better than her own daughter, so well that it made other noble women jealous. Now, rumors about me were spreading everywhere. They said I was jealous, that I hadn't produced a single child in the year or two since my marriage, and that I refused to let my husband take a concubine. They also said I was arrogant and domineering, that I had angered my husband so much that he slept in a separate room, and that I would be divorced sooner or later. I brought these rumors to my mother-in-law and cried my heart out. She immediately took out her precious amethyst bracelet and specially brought me to the temple to get some fresh air. Jingwa temple is vast, yet at the same time, it feels so small enough to run into several familiar faces all at once. Madam, we meet again. It's you, the palace maid from that day. What are you doing here? The senior palace maid smiled. Why I am here is not important. Perhaps you should ask how your husband and his childhood sweetheart ended up here instead. Following the direction she indicated, I saw my husband and a young man in blue robes standing in a pavilion in the distance. They were standing very close, so close it seemed as if they were pressed together. Then the young man in blue draped his own cloak over my husband's shoulders. I turned around, not wanting to see this glaring scene anymore. As expected of childhood sweethearts, even after so many years apart, it's still the same. What childhood sweethearts? Don't talk nonsense. My husband and he are both men. How could it be as you say? In the palace, it's common for women to form intimate relationships. Such as myself, high-ranking officials and nobles have their own preferences for male companionship. Like that young master. Nonsense, if you're not worried. Then why don't you dare to look? I was struck where it hurt and snapped angrily. What are you, really, a spy? A spy, more like a lunatic, if you ask me. I ignored him and quickly walked away. On the way back, I replayed that scene over and over in my mind, recalling what the palace maid had said. My heart felt exceptionally bitter. How could there be so many preferences for men or women in this world? My husband is, after all, a woman. Love between a man and a woman is only natural. What am I? Then, perhaps the two of them had long been in sync with each other's hearts, but were hindered by their status, finding it difficult to speak openly. Or perhaps, the young master also knew her identity, and they had already reached a mutual understanding. And now, my role seems strikingly similar to the stumbling block in those stories that stands in the way of the scholar and the young lady. The more I thought about it, the further my mind wandered, before even facing reality. My heart was already pierced and scarred by my own speculations, so I took a wrong turn and headed deep into the mountains. By the time I realized it, I had no idea where I was. I tried to find my way back, but the surroundings grew increasingly unfamiliar, the vegetation denser, and as the sky gradually darkened, I completely panicked. Tears I could no longer hold back slid from the corners of my eyes. The sky was completely dark now, and a biting cold wind swept through. In the distance, the howls of wild beasts echoed from time to time. I didn't know what they were, so I crouched down where I was, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to keep warm. Though it barely helped, I was still shivering from the cold. Before my consciousness faded, I even thought to myself, if I died like this, would it count as solving a big problem for my husband? Opening my eyes again, I found myself in a familiar environment, but my mind was still a bit hazy. Your Highness, the lady has awakened. After the maid's voice, a familiar face came into view. How are you feeling? Is there anywhere you're uncomfortable? She was concerned about me. The anxiety on her face couldn't be faked, and her voice was incredibly gentle, as if she were caring for something fragile. All the grievances, fear, and terror in my heart erupted in an instant, and tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. Husband, I threw myself into her arms. She was at a loss, wiping away my tears. I thought I would never see you again, I sobbed. They will. She held me in her arms, comforting me softly, her arms wrapped around me tightly, making me feel that I was truly important. I leaned against her chest, hearing a drum-like thumping sound, steady and powerful, the sounds overlapping. Unable to tell whether it was her heartbeat or my own. This is my husband, and he can only be mine. I cried myself to exhaustion and fell asleep in my husband's arms. When I woke again, the sky had already darkened. Looking at the figure beside me, the uneasiness in my heart began to fade a little. I'm awake. After finishing the porridge, drink the medicine. I obediently took the bowl and began sipping it slowly. After finishing the porridge, another bowl of dark, murky medicine was handed to me. I frowned but still took it, held my breath, and drank it down. The bitter taste instantly flooded my mouth, and immediately after, a piece of candied fruit was brought to my lips. Without thinking, I swallowed it in one gulp, accidentally brushing against my husband's fingers. His expression changed slightly. What's wrong, my husband? She shook her head, indicating it was nothing, then stood up, thinking she was going to the study again. I grabbed the hem of her clothes in a moment of panic. Where are you going? Let the maid come in and tidy up. I still didn't let go. Are you going to the study tonight? She hesitated. I'm not going. After drinking the medicine, I couldn't resist the drowsiness and fell asleep again. When I woke up, sure enough, there was no one by my side. Big liar. A wave of grievances surged in my heart. I immediately put on a thin coat, went to the study, and without hesitation slipped into her bed. However, as soon as I lifted the blanket, my husband opened his eyes. His fierce expression startled me. She grabbed me and forcefully pressed me onto the bed, using such strength that tears welled up in my eyes from the pain. It hurts, husband. Only then did she realize and immediately relaxed her grip. I didn't know. I thought it was. I'm sorry. She was speaking incoherently. She gently rubbed my wrist with a soft touch. She then lit a candle, brightening the room. Seeing the bruise on my hand, she frowned with regret before pulling out a box of ointment from somewhere and applying it to my injury. How did you get here? It's too cold to sleep, so I came over. Besides, you said you wouldn't come to the study. I gave her a resentful look. My tone, her hand paused for a moment. I lost track of time reading in the study and ended up resting here. It's my fault. Liar, I muttered under my breath. My husband also felt guilty and simply stayed silent. It's getting late. Let's go to sleep. Hold me while I sleep. I pushed my luck. She remained silent, seemingly struggling with something. I continued to add, I'm afraid of the cold. I can't sleep. I got my wish and slept in her embrace. My husband's body was stiff, as if he was trying hard to keep a certain part of him from touching me, but I paid no mind and leaned in anyway, pressing my whole body tightly against him. Your body is so warm, husband. She hummed in agreement, closed her eyes, and drifted into sleep. I knew she wasn't really asleep. Gazing at her beautiful face, a bold idea came to mind. I planted a kiss on her face. My husband opened his eyes and looked at me, pretending to be shy. I pulled the blanket over my eyes, also hiding her complicated expression. I'm very nervous, not knowing how she will react. Will she push me away, get up and leave the room, or pretend nothing happened? What I anticipated did not happen. She just said heavily, go to sleep. From that day on, we slept together every day. She went from being completely stiff at first to gradually getting used to it, and later, when she fell asleep, she would instinctively pull me into her arms. At such times, I would take advantage of her being asleep and secretly press my lips to her face. As time went on, I became even bolder, sometimes on her face, sometimes on her forehead, and even on her lips. Boiling a frog in warm water is nothing more than this. I just want to fill her heart little by little with my presence. I thought we would continue like this forever, until I accidentally overheard a conversation. General Jong Song is also a good child, and he's a good match for our Moa. Besides, they've known each other since childhood and are quite familiar with each other. When the time comes to give birth to the child, it will be under E's name, which will clarify the identity. What about Moa? The general sighed, seemingly disapproving. Moa will understand us. I returned to my room in a daze, unable to snap out of it for a long time. It turns out that Jong Song had known about my husband's identity all along, and my mother-in-law's family had intended for Jong Song to carry on the Liu family line with my husband, with any children born being registered under my name. This plan is truly flawless. Does my husband know about this? As I was lost in thought, my husband's voice came from outside the room. It was my husband returning from court. I gathered my thoughts and stood up to greet him. Darling, with such heavy wind and snow outside, why didn't you use an umbrella? I chided gently while brushing the snow off his clothes. Then, taking her hand, he led her to the side of the warm stove. It's nothing. She seemed to be in a very good mood today, her eyes and brows brimming with excitement. Is there something to celebrate? I asked while helping her take off her outer robe. Jong Song invited me to go hunting on Mount Jinyun in a couple of days. My hand paused in its motion. The snow and wind have been so heavy these days. Wouldn't it be too dangerous to go up the mountain? And with your health, my lord? I am truly worried. Aren't you the one who said you were afraid of the cold? I'll hunt a sable coat to keep you warm. I was somewhat moved, and without thinking, my hands wrapped around her waist as I nestled into her embrace. She stiffened for a moment, but her hand instinctively rested on my waist, sending a tingling sensation through me. With my husband by my side, I don't feel cold at all. The mountains are too dangerous. I don't need any sable fur. If my husband is worried that I might be cold, why not accompany me to a place? I nestled in her arms, feigning a coquettish demeanor. Her arms loosely encircled me, her voice inexplicably hoarse. What place? Moonspring. Moonspring is the most famous hot spring near Kyoto. It is said that the spring water has the effect of prolonging life, making it a renowned wellness retreat in Kyoto. 2 days later, the wind and snow stopped. Early in the morning, I begged her to go out. An hour later, we arrived at Moonspring, and my husband generously booked a small courtyard. In the middle of the courtyard was the bathhouse. Upon entering, a large pool stood in the center, with water flowing out from holes, steaming and billowing with heat, making the entire room feel like a paradise on earth. It was my first time soaking in a hot spring, and I was a bit excited. I couldn't wait to change into appropriate clothes, roll up my pant legs, and sit on the marble platform. The moment my feet touched the hot spring water, I felt so comfortable it was as if my soul was about to float away. After soaking for a while, I turned around and saw that my husband was still standing nearby. Husband, come quickly. I waved my hand, signaling for him to come over. My husband, as if his soul had just returned to his body, moved over stiffly and sat down beside me. A mischievous thought stirred within me. I stood up to leave, but my foot slipped, and I began to tumble into the pool. A pair of hands caught me just in time. However, his wet hands were exceptionally slippery, and my husband failed to hold on firmly. Following the force of my fall, he ended up in the water with me. The pond was deeper than I had imagined, and I accidentally choked on a mouthful of water. Before I could choke on a second mouthful, a pair of hands pulled me out. I lay in her arms, still shaken and unsettled. Are you okay? My husband asked with concern. I shook my head, my slender arm resting on her shoulder, tightly clutching the hem of her clothes. The soaked clothes clung tightly to my skin, and I seemed to sense an unusual restlessness in her. After a while, my husband fidgeted, as if trying to keep a little distance. How could I let her have her way? I tightened my arm, pressing my body even closer. Darling, just now I choked and it was uncomfortable. With reddened eyes, I looked at her pitifully. I clearly felt the hands that were about to push me away pause, then pat my back instead. Let's go ashore first. Okay, I nodded weakly. But the smile at the corner of my mouth was unstoppable. After we got ashore and rested for a while, my husband called for the maid to come in, bring 2 sets of clean clothes and dry towels. Yes, a moment later, the maid came in carrying a tray. On it, besides the clothes, there was also a small pot of wine and some snacks. After changing clothes and coming out, my husband picked up the wine glass and took a sniff. What is this, young master? This is complimentary wine from our establishment, a product from the western regions. The maid lowered her head and replied respectfully. Such fine wine is actually being given as a gift. My heart tightened. It is only fitting to offer good wine to distinguished guests. Then the maid withdrew, giving me a meaningful glance before she left. I feigned surprise. Husband, what kind of wine is grape wine? I've never heard of it before. As he spoke, he opened the wine pot, filled a cup, and was about to taste it. Just as he was about to bring it to his mouth, the cup in his hand disappeared. Wine can make one drunk. I want to try it. She couldn't win against me and let go of the cup. A cup of wine went down. My eyes lit up. The taste was surprisingly good. Husband, you should have some too. Is it good? She nodded. After a few drinks, the medicine took effect, and I started feeling dizzy and blurry-eyed. My chest felt extremely hot, and my hands began to wander restlessly toward her. She stumbled and helped me to a nearby lounge. I was completely limp against her. My husband also seemed drunk, her eyes dazed, her cheeks flushed with a rosy hue, so beautiful it was hard to resist. As soon as we reached the bed, I wrapped my arms around her neck and fell back, my lips firmly pressing against hers. So soft, so fragrant. I couldn't resist reaching for the soft object hidden inside. The moment I touched it, I felt a tremendous force pushing back. My body was already weak, and with that push, I crashed into the wall. The pain in my shoulder was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. I couldn't help but recall the words of the senior palace maid. This cup of wine is just to liven the mood. If she has feelings for you, things will naturally fall into place. If not, it will only add a bit of restlessness. At this point, how could anyone not understand the situation? Tears silently streamed down from the corners of her eyes. Let it be. Pretend to be drunk, and when you wake up tomorrow morning, remember nothing, letting everything return to how it was before. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and indulged in the dull ache in my shoulders and back like a form of self-punishment, letting my tears fall helplessly. Then, a pair of hands cupped my face. Wiping away the tear stains, she let out a long sigh. Why do you always provoke me? This sentence struck a nerve, and a sudden surge of anger welled up inside me. Who exactly is provoking whom? Fueled by this rage, I lunged at her fiercely and bit her hard. I wanted to bite her again, but the next moment, the world spun around. I was pinned firmly to the bed, followed by a torrent of overwhelming kisses, so hard, so deep, as if trying to devour me. I was terribly drunk. The window curtains kept swaying. I tried to grab them to make them stop, but they only swayed even more. The next morning, I was awakened by an itch on my face. When I opened my eyes, I saw my husband's face up close. She was holding a small strand of my hair, teasing the tip of my nose with it. I couldn't help but sneeze. Awake. Her voice was as gentle as if it were soaked in honey. Husband, you're teasing me, I said with a playful scold. She didn't speak, just kept looking at me, her eyes seeming to hold stars. For a moment, I was completely captivated. Then he lowered his head and buried it in her shoulder. My mind gradually cleared, and the embarrassing scenes from last night kept replaying in my head. I was so embarrassed that I immediately burrowed under the covers. About yesterday. Do you mind? She wrapped her arms around my waist and pulled me into her embrace. The direct friction of the fabric against her skin sent a tingling sensation through her body. I couldn't help but shiver, feeling both embarrassed and annoyed. Why was she still fully clothed while I was left completely exposed? We are husband and wife after all, and I was willing to do what we did yesterday. Her voice was somewhat emotional as she held me even tighter. I also wrapped my arms around her waist in return. After a quiet, tender moment, I slowly lifted my head from her embrace and asked, Husband, do you think I might already be carrying a precious child in my belly now? As soon as I finished speaking, I clearly felt my husband's entire body stiffen. I struggled to hold back the laughter inside me. What did you say? It's about our child. I've been married into this household for 2 years now, and I still haven't been able to give the general's family an heir. You have no idea what people are saying about me outside, now that we have consummated our marriage. We are sure to have a plump, fair-skinned son next year. I feigned shyness. My husband stiffly raised his hand, lifted the blanket to glance at his own chest, then let it drop with a hint of despair. Husband, I exclaimed in surprise, tugging at the drafty blanket. my teary eyes accusing her of her earlier action. She expressionlessly adjusted the blanket, her calm eyes showing not a ripple of emotion. I pretended not to notice her unusual behavior and continued speaking. My dear husband, what do you think would be a good name for our child in the future? I kept chattering away about my future aspirations, and as I looked at her dazed expression, I felt both amused and inexplicably satisfied. Serves you right for deceiving me. In the following days, the worry on my husband's face never faded. Every time she mustered the courage to say something, I would deliberately change the subject, seeing her holding back her frustration, unable to vent it. My mood, on the contrary, felt particularly light and cheerful. Another day of leisure arrived, and I decided to give my husband a surprise. That night, I went to bed early, snuggled under the covers, with only a pair of glistening eyes peeking out. After a while, my husband finished washing up and returned. As usual, he lifted the blanket and lay down, his hands skillfully reaching for my waist, but upon touching the smooth skin, he abruptly pulled back. Her eyes were flustered. You. The words that followed were left unspoken, all choked back by me. My husband widened his eyes, neither pushing me away nor cooperating. I didn't know how to proceed, so after a moment, I pulled back. The next second, tears as large as beans rolled down. Seeing me cry, she panicked and quickly asked, why are you crying? Did something upset you? I couldn't stop my tears, glanced at her, and just wouldn't speak. She grew completely frantic, pulling me into her embrace. At times she would nuzzle me with her forehead, at other times press her cheek against mine, trying to comfort me in this way. Finally, her tone was almost pleading. Don't cry, my heart is breaking. My heart skipped a beat violently. Then, tilting my head back, I choked out, darling. The next second, a pair of scorching lips fiercely pressed down. Unlike the orderly rhythm I had counted before, she was extremely passionate, as if she wanted to devour me whole. I don't know how much time had passed when she finally let go, and I gasped for fresh air in big, desperate breaths. I lay in her embrace, our two hearts pressed tightly together, beating in perfect rhythm. The wine from last time was quite good. I brought some back care for a small drink. Her breathing was slightly uneven, her voice hoarse with a hint of temptation. I was already on the verge of intoxication before even taking a sip of wine. I knew it was a trap. Yet I willingly savored every moment of it. After a few small drinks, we fell together into a mysterious world. However, those clothes remained welded to her body like iron. For a period after that, my husband became obsessed with wine. Almost every day, he would share a drink and joyful conversation with me. I couldn't bear it any longer. One day I woke up, and my body was once again filled with that familiar soreness. The aching in the front 2 spots was even more intense. She seemed to particularly love those places. Every night, she would linger there, reluctant to leave. I glanced at her flat chest covered by her clothes, then looked down at the mottled marks on my own chest, feeling even more resentful. I clenched my fist and swung it toward her chest. With that punch, she stirred. I thought she was about to wake up, but instead, she just tightened her grip, holding me even more firmly. The soft, pale skin was rubbed raw and sore by the fabric. I regret it. I shouldn't have teased her. In the end, I'm the one who suffers. Before sleepiness set in, I thought to myself that next time she wants to explain her identity, I won't interrupt. Little did I know that this wait would almost sever the bond between us. My mother-in-law must have noticed our situation and called me over for questioning. Her face was gloomy, no longer the amiable and kind appearance it once was, just when I thought my answer was flawless. I woke up the next day to find myself locked in a small, dark room. Based on the distant sound of bells and the scent of incense, I deduced that I must be in a temple. I had a rough idea of who could have abducted me from the general's residence. This confinement lasted for 3 days, with meals brought in every day. I ate whatever was served, thinking that when my husband arrives, she mustn't notice I've lost weight. On the 3rd day, the room door opened. My heart leaped with joy, and I quickly ran to the entrance, ready to throw myself into her arms and pour out all the grievances of these past few days. Unexpectedly, the one who opened the door was a not entirely unfamiliar stranger. "It's you, Jong Song didn't waste any time with me and got straight to the point. You have quite the skill, manipulating people at your whim. What do you mean by that? Jong Song's voice suddenly turned sinister. You knew her identity, yet you used your feminine wiles to seduce her. I truly admire you, Mr. Jong. I let out a light scoff. What are you laughing at? My husband treats you as a brother, yet you harbor such filthy thoughts about her. What do you know? We've had a bond since childhood, and it's only natural for a man and a woman to be attracted to each other. Is that so? Does that include your conspiracy to make her pregnant? Jong Song was struck where it hurt. This was all for the sake of the general's bloodline. Hypocrite. Jong Song laughed in anger. Yes, I am hypocritical. In order to win her over, I will stop at nothing. Jong Song suddenly leaned in with a sinister look. What do you think would happen if her identity were exposed? Would her entire family be executed, or would the old emperor take her into his harem? That old emperor is particularly fond of this type. How dare you? Whether you dare or not depends entirely on your cooperation, miss. Despite all my reluctance, I still gave in. The next day, I moved into the courtyard specifically reserved for pilgrims. On the very day I moved in, my husband came. Her cheek was marked with a wound, and she was limping on her right leg. I forced back the ache in my heart. I've come to take you home. As she approached, I caught a faint scent of blood. What happened? I asked, my heart aching as I gently touched her cheek. It's nothing, I just accidentally bumped into the edge of the bed. This is clearly a mark left by something being whipped. Let's go back first. The weather has been really nice these days, and I've booked a boat. We can go boating on the lake together. She held my hand in hers, rubbing it gently while softly blowing on it. I closed my eyes, feeling the trembling in my heart, and when I opened them again, only a coldness remained in my gaze. Shenmo. I called her by her full name for the first time. She looked up in a daze. You lied to me. Her already pale face instantly lost its last trace of color. Please let me explain. Her voice choked with emotion. I shook my head, unwilling to listen. Even one more word, and I wouldn't be able to stop myself from throwing myself into her arms. Go away. I don't want to see you anymore. She staggered back 2 steps, looking at me with disbelief and despair. I turned my back and walked step by step toward the room. Something blurred my vision, making it impossible to move forward, closing the door, completely cutting off that person's gaze. I weakly crouched down, tears streaming down my face. 2 months passed in a blink, and I devoted myself wholeheartedly to chanting scriptures and reciting Buddha's name. During this time, my husband came by every now and then, but I always turned him away at the door. It was another day of rest. And I sat in the courtyard for a long time, so long that the sun moved from the morning light to the western hills. My husband did not show up, but a mysterious person appeared instead. Every time she showed up, something unpleasant was bound to happen. It's you again. I have no tea to offer you. The heavily guarded imperial palace was treated by this person as their own backyard, coming and going as they pleased. You're quite comfortable here, but your husband is having a tough time. The senior palace maid gloated. I sat up abruptly. What happened to her? He was sent by the old emperor to the north to fight the barbarians. If you go to the city gate now, you might still catch a distant glimpse of him. The northern border is bitterly cold, and with her frail body and being a woman, how could she possibly endure it? The army has already set off and is gradually marching out of the city. I hurried as fast as I could and finally arrived, before I could even catch my breath. My eyes instinctively searched through the crowd until I spotted the familiar figure riding at the very front. She wore shoulder armor, carried a long sword at her waist, and sat tall on her horse, looking imposing and majestic. The autumn wind was bleak. It had been 4 or 5 months since the army set out, and almost every month I had received letters from my husband. Only this month, the messenger was unusually late. As the days passed, the unease in my heart gradually grew. Several more days passed, and there was still no news. The anxiety in my heart grew even stronger. I simply couldn't sit still any longer and returned to the Yongchang Marquis Manor, a place I hadn't set foot in for over half a year. The journey was smooth and unobstructed. I went straight to my mother-in-law's courtyard, only to find her sitting in her seat, her face weathered with age and worry. You're back." Her tone was familiar, as if the previous discord had never happened. "Has my husband sent word of her safety?" My mother-in-law paused, her face pale, and my heart sank. "Is my husband all right?" My mother-in-law shook her head, unable to speak, leaving me unsure whether she didn't know or if the news was bad. I turned and left, immediately seeking out the senior palace maid. Then I dropped to my knees before her. The senior palace maid was clearly startled by me. "I want to go to the northern frontier." "You're crazy. I won't rest until I see her in person." "Get up first." I was not moved. "Don't worry, that guy has 9 lives, he'll definitely be fine." I still remained silent. "Sister-in-law, I'm begging you, please get up first. If she finds out you knelt to me, she'll skin me alive. This person's relationship with my husband is indeed unusual. Give me a straight answer. How is she really doing right now?" "Well, she definitely won't die, but as for whether she might lose an arm or a leg, I can't guarantee that." The situation was actually so dangerous. Hey, don't cry, I was just teasing. She'll definitely come back in one piece." I glared at her. "You should have been taken to the battlefield too." I didn't return to the general's residence and continued to stay in the temple courtyard, chanting sutras and praying for her every day. I sent a few letters in between, but they all went unanswered. I was truly restless and uneasy, just as I was preparing to pack my things and head north. I finally received her reply, "Everything is fine," just one sentence, yet it made my constantly anxious heart finally settle. One night, as usual, I got up to use the restroom. When I turned over, my left hand suddenly pressed against something warm. My mind instantly cleared. And I turned my head to the left. By the moonlight, I could see a figure sleeping beside me. I was about to cry out in surprise when this figure suddenly sprang up and covered my mouth. I struggled with all my might. It's me, I'm back." As the candlelight flickered to life and I confirmed it was my husband, all the fear and grievances I had endured over the past days burst forth in a flood of tears. I threw myself into her arms, pounding on her desperately. "You bastard. All right, I'm a bastard, a scoundrel." She let me hit and scold her, her tone full of indulgence. I swung my fist wildly again, but then I heard her let out a muffled groan. I didn't use much force, so why does her face look so pale? Suddenly, a certain possibility crossed my mind. "Are you injured?" "No, I haven't." "You lied to me again." I was both angry and heartbroken, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. "My dearie, don't cry anymore, you're breaking my heart." "It's just a minor injury, nothing serious." I turned my back to her, not wanting to deal with her. After a while, she leaned her entire weight against my back. "Get away, don't touch me. Don't move. My wound is acting up." Hearing this, I panicked instantly and quickly turned around, only to fall for her trick. I was pinned down on the bed by her. "My wound hurts. I need kisses to make it better. Stop fooling around." I dodged her kiss. She pressed in from the other side again. After dodging a few times, she finally succeeded. Seizing the opportunity, I pressed my lips against hers. "Let me see your wound." She pulled it open and pressed it against the headboard, leaning down as she did so. "We'll look at it tomorrow." Whatever else I was about to say was drowned out by the roaring waves. The next morning, I woke up in a warm embrace, cozy and comfortable. Instinctively, I nestled deeper into it. It took a while before my consciousness slowly returned. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw my husband playing with my hair again. "She seems to really like my hair." Neither of us spoke, savoring this long-lost tenderness. After a long time, she finally spoke. What you said in your previous letter, is it still true?" I pretended to have amnesia. "What letter? Did I ever write a letter?" She was getting a bit anxious. I think I did write one. It was 5 letters." I nodded perfunctorily. Though inside I was already too embarrassed for words, there had been no news from her before, so my mind wandered wildly, one moment imagining her severely injured, the next thinking she was afflicted with a deadly poison. Then, from some book or another, I read about a dying person who, upon hearing their lover's call, miraculously came back to life. So, in a moment of impulse, I wrote many words expressing my feelings and a desire to grow old together. Now that it's all been brought out into the open, how could I not feel embarrassed? "In your letter, You said you were willing to grow old with me. Is that true? Such an embarrassing question, she actually asked it. I was both ashamed and angry. False. Go grow old with your brother Jong instead. She didn't speak for a long while. I looked up at her, her eyes filled with ferocity. That little traitor has already been devoured by wolves. Don't take it to heart. My eyes widened as I suppressed the shock in my heart. I opened my mouth but ultimately said nothing more. After a while, a pair of restless hands began to move furtively, and soon a tingling sensation washed over me. Would you be willing to grow old with me? His breath brushed against my ear, sending a tingling sensation that was hard to bear. I took a deep breath. What about your mother and father? How do we explain it to them? It's already been explained. I got a good beating for it. When was that? I struggled to sit up, but was immediately pushed back down. The day you drove me away, she said with grievance. I felt a bit guilty, then changed the subject. What about the descendants of the general's household? Let them have their own children. I avoided her lips. You're wound. She had no patience left to answer my questions and directly blocked me. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.